going to look at these ideas of fractions and ratios and rates as they portray themselves with percentages. And so to start with, see if I can get my, here we go. The word percent, per means divide, and cent means 100. So we're going to divide by 100. And so the percent symbol comes from that. It was originally 1 over 100, but in convenience of printing, it worked its way. Old printing presses, they came up with this symbol to work for it. So if we see 48%, that's equivalent to 48 per 100. And we can write that as a decimal, 0.48. You'll find that the decimal representation of a percentage is probably most useful. So how this works out as we talk about percentages, and I'll use the example in the slides, 100 parrots with 58% female means that 58 out of 100 are female, or 58%. I should say 58 are female, and so 58 out of 100 gives us 58%. If we have something out of 100, we'll get our percentage naturally. So what's another example? 31 out of 100 instructors are in their 40s. So 31 out of 100, this writes just like our ratios did, 31 out of 100, but out of 100, we would say 31%, 31 per 100. And so all of these percentages can be written as decimals. So the 58%, if we write as a decimal, we divide by 100, or we move the decimal place over twice. So this becomes 0.58. Notice we lose the percentage sign when we do that. And so 31%, we move the decimal place twice to the left, and get 0.31. So I can write any percentage as a decimal. So if I have 49%, I'll move the decimal place 2 to the left, and I get 0.49. I can even have decimal percentages, 3.8%. Now if I move the decimal place twice over to the left, 1, 2, I have to pick up an extra 0 there. So it's 0.38. And we can even have percentages that are more than 100. 158%, if I move the decimal place 2 to the left, becomes 1.85. And I can have a really small percentage, 0.69%. Again, move the decimal place twice to the left, 1, 2, so 0.0069. These are the useful ways to calculate, and this is how we like to say it, because it becomes easy for us to compare. Well, we can also write percentages as fractions. I mean, remember decimals are a special form of fraction, and percentages kind of hint at decimal fractions. So 7% is equal to 7 times 1 over 100, or 7/100. 60% is equal to 60 times 1 over 100. So we're using 1 over 100 to substitute in for the percent sign. Now, both of these are divisible by 5, 10, right? If I take 10 out of this, I have 6 and 10, and then I can divide by 2 again, 3 and 5. And so I get 3/5. And let's do one with a decimal. 1.4% is equal to 1.4 times 1 over 100. But I've got to move the decimal place 1 to the right here. So I'll move it 1 to the right here also, because I have to do the same things upstairs and downstairs. So I get 14 over 1,000. But both are divisible by 2. So 7/500. And what I can do is I can write any fraction in it, or any percentage in its simplest form fraction then. So 150% is equal to 150 1 over 100, because we're going to substitute 1 over 100 for that. They'll both lose a 0. And then they're both divisible by 5, so I get 3/2. Let's do 66 2/3%. Well, that's going to be 66 2/3 times 1 over 100. But what I'll want to do is I want to write this as an improper fraction. So 3 times 66 is 198 plus 2. That's 200 over 3 times 1 over 100. And we can cancel 100 out of each of these and get 2/3. And 12% is 12 times 1 over 100. Both are divisible by 2. So, or both are divisible by 4, right? That's 3 times 4. And this is 25 times 4. So the 4's cancel. And I get 3/25. Well, I can go the other way. I can write decimals as percentages also. Clear my blackboard here. So 0.27. Now when I created a percent, I moved the decimal place to the left. Here, I'm going to move it to the right. 1, 2. And so that's 27, but I changed it to percent. We can think about this as the same as multiplying by 100%. And that would transfer it from decimal to this form. So let's look at some decimals as percentages. So 0.26, I'll move the decimal place to the right twice, and that becomes 26%. 1.46, move this over twice, and that becomes 146%. 0.09, move the decimal to the right twice, and that's 9%. 0.7, well, if I move the decimal twice to the right, 1, 2, I need to put a 0 in there. And so that's 70%. And 0.061, if I move it over twice, 1, 2, that is 6.1%. And so we're able to take decimals to percentages, percentages to decimals. Let's look at taking fractions into percentages. So if I want to turn 1/8 into a percentage, I have to multiply it by 100%, which that is 1/8 times 100 over 1, and I'll leave my percent sign here. Now, both of these are divisible by 4. That leaves me with 25 and 2. So I get 25 2%, 25 halves percent. But let's do this division. So 2 goes into 2 once. 2 goes into 5 twice with a remainder of 1. And if I bring across the remainder, I'll do it over here. 1, 2. 1 times 2 is 2. 0, bring down the 5. 4. This is 12.5%. Three over 20 as a percentage is 3 over 20 times 100%. 20 goes into 105 times, so I'm going to get 5 over 1, or 15%. And 1 3/4 as a percentage is going to be, well, we'll turn this into an improper fraction. 4 times 1 plus 3 is 7/4, and I'll multiply it by 100%. Again, 4 goes into 100 25 times. So I get 7 times 25. So 7 times 5 is 5. Carry my 3. 7 times 2 is 14 plus the 3. 175%. So percentages are a useful tool for conveying kind of a common ratio or value. So let's look at an example. 67% of American men are happy with their weight. And so let's convert this to a decimal. So 67% converted to a decimal. We'll move the decimal place 2 to the left, which is 0.67. And let's look at another one here. An advertisement says a stereo is 1/5 off. And so we want to figure out what 1/5 is as a percentage. So we take 1/5 and we multiply it by 100%. And 5 goes into 100 20 times, leaving a 1 down here, and that's 20%. So 1/5 off is a 20% off. And so this is what percentages do. They're a special way of looking at ratios and rates, and a very specific set of ratios are what we focus on. We'll continue exploring these.